Germany's leading media development organization. 5 minutes for debate is a short TV-style talk that we present to you during breaks at Global Media Forum, and it deals with specific issues of media development in a globalizing world and human rights. I am Patrick Leusch, I am the host, and my guests today are firstly Brenda Burell, co-founder of Kubatana, NGO in Zimbabwe, Harare, and the IT director for Freedom Fone, and we talk about Freedom Fone here. And at the other hand, we have Thomas Lansner, professor for media and politics at Columbia University. Welcome, thank you for being with us. The topic we are discussing for the next 5 minutes is campaigning versus journalism. What does that mean? We heard this morning that media are the artillery of freedom. Media are instrument to promote human rights. And the question is, are journalists really supposed to campaign for human rights? What would you say?
Journalists certainly can campaign for human rights. It's not their primary function. Their primary function in a free press is to provide information. Provide accurate information, to provide honest information, to provide information that's as complete as possible, and to provide a public and policymakers with the kind of information that they need to make decisions that hopefully would promote human rights, but it's not a campaigning tool in and of itself.
Yes, that is exactly what I would say. There is a huge difference between information, also information on human rights, but then there is the request to enable journalists to better report on human rights, to better understand it, to fuel the discussion. Isn't this going in the direction of make them an instrument for a good target, but making them an instrument rather than make them report on something?
Well, media must have a right in and of itself. Media is a human right. It's not an empty vessel, though. It is also a tool at the same time for human rights. How do we enable them? Yes, journalists need more knowledge of human rights, of humanitarian law, and to have the information to report on this. And it is the role of advocacy organizations, NGOs, universities to help train journalists to understand human rights and to be able to report on them better.
Mm-hmm. This is maybe a quite theoretical position. Brenda, you're from Zimbabwe, you're living in Harare, which is quite difficult environment, not only for journalists, but for people in general, but especially maybe for media. Freedom Phone, you invented, is replacing radio by mobile phone technology and makes audio content available in an environment where media are unfree, for instance. Is Freedom Phone, in your perspective, more an information tool, so more journalistically bound, or is it a campaigning tool for civil society?
Well, actually, Freedom Phone is a very generic tool. So, in fact, it could be put to any of these purposes. And depending on the environment in which you're working, you'll have more or less space to do some of these things. In environments where information or unbiased information is difficult to come by, it could well be used as a tool of journalism. But societies need information for all kinds of different reasons, and Freedom Phone is pitched, interestingly, more at community radio, in countries where licenses are freely available. In a country like Zimbabwe, there is no community radio. So this is when a platform like Freedom Phone can begin possibly to try to fill the gap and become an information dissemination tool. So it could be used for campaigning by campaigners and activists, and it could be used for health and agriculture extension by practitioners in that space.
From a purely journalistic perspective, one can say that a good journalist is never going common with an idea, even not a good idea. So it's about independency, neutrality, etc. Is this a concept which is feasible in an environment like Zimbabwe for journalists, for media workers?
Well, I think the bias of pretty much all of the media vehicles that we see in Zimbabwe is clear. There doesn't seem to be much neutral news in that space. And what motivates me to get people to use a platform like Freedom Phone is to begin to add their voices to that mix. So for me, it opens up the information space to people who are not media professionals. And that's an exciting new field of citizen journalism, one might say.
May I just for a second, the notion of citizen journalism is one that is much bandied about, but I'd rather use the term citizen reporters. The notion of journalism is that there are certain different standards that are being met. Citizen reporting, on the other hand, opens up to a wide variety of people offering all sorts of information on any tool, any generic tool. And it also, citizen reporting doesn't have to be quote-unquote neutral or objective. It can be full of passion, full of information, full of advocacy, but in no way held to the kind of standards that we hope good journalism is held to.
But this is exactly the point. Is citizen journalism and the new dimension of social media and content producing, not only by professionals, but by citizens, by activists, by everybody. Everybody can become a reporter. Is this true in your eyes?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is true. Whether the quality of their product stands up to scrutiny is another question altogether, but it's time that more people had the ability to produce the news and to disseminate the news. And so in countries where there's good access to the internet, you'll find that people are using a specific kind of new media. But in countries that are largely off the grid, and this includes countries like Zimbabwe, we're looking at platforms that target the mobile phone off the internet. And that then opens up another area of information activists and aggregator.
Brenda Burell, co-founder of Kubatana from Harare, Zimbabwe. Thank you very much for being with us. Thomas Lansner, professor at Columbia University. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
This was the second edition of 5 Minutes for Debate, hosted by Deutsche Welle Academy. Don't miss the next edition, 3:30. Then we will talk about new trends in freedom of expression around the world, and the guest will be Dr. Hauke Hartmann.